The sound of crystal clinking against crystal should have been elegant. Instead, it felt like nails on a chalkboard as my wife Lydia raised her champagne flute high above our dinner table, her perfectly manicured fingers catching the light from our expensive chandelier. "Everyone! Everyone!" she called out, her voice carrying that practiced enthusiasm she used for her Instagram stories. "I want to make a toast." I watched from my seat at the head of our mahogany dining table, the same table I'd spent 3 months restoring from a water-damaged wreck I'd found at an estate sale. The irony wasn't lost on me. I specialized in bringing dead things back to life, yet I couldn't seem to restore whatever had died between Lydia and me. Our guests turned toward her with expectant smiles. Bianca Chen, Lydia's college roommate and current partner in crime, practically bounced in her chair with anticipation. Marnie Walsh, the perpetually single real estate agent who lived vicariously through everyone else's drama, already had her phone out, probably recording for her TikTok. Roman Cale sat at the other end of the table, looking every inch the successful producer he claimed to be, though I'd never seen evidence of anything he'd actually produced beyond expensive dinners and weekend trips. "To my amazing friends," Lydia continued, her voice growing stronger. "You've been with me through everything. The good times, the bad times, the times when I questioned every decision I'd ever made." She paused for dramatic effect. Even after 8 years of marriage, I had to admit she knew how to work a room. Her auburn hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, and her emerald dress, a gift from some luxury brand sponsor, hugged her figure in all the right places. She looked like success, like happiness, like everything I apparently wasn't. "Husbands come and go," she said, her eyes meeting mine for just a fraction of a second. "But friends are forever." The table erupted in cheers and laughter. Glasses clinked again, this time with genuine enthusiasm. Bianca actually stood up to hug Lydia. Marnie whooped like she was at a football game. Roman's smile was so wide it looked painful. I sat there, champagne flute halfway to my lips, feeling like I'd just been punched in the gut by someone wearing velvet gloves. "Oh my God, Lydia, yes," Bianca squealed. "That's going on a throw pillow." "I'm literally getting that tattooed," Marnie added, though we all knew she'd never actually do it. Roman raised his glass toward me with mock solemnity. "Don't take it personally, Silas. We all know you're one of the good ones." The good ones. Like I was a pet that had learned not to piss on the carpet. "Besides," Lydia said, settling back into her chair with a satisfied smile, "Silas understands. Don't you, honey? You know how important my friendships are to me." All eyes turned to me. I could feel their expectation, their assumption that I'd play along with whatever game this was, that I'd smile and nod and maybe make some self-deprecating joke about being the boring husband who was lucky to have such a vibrant wife. Instead, I set my champagne flute down with deliberate care and looked around the table. "You know what's funny about restoration work?" I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Most people think it's about bringing something back to its original state, but that's not really true. You can't undo damage. You can only decide what's worth saving and what needs to be thrown away." The laughter died. Bianca's smile faltered. Even Roman looked confused. "Sometimes," I continued, "you spend months working on a piece, thinking you can fix it, thinking you can make it beautiful again, but then you realize the rot goes too deep. The foundation is compromised, and the kindest thing you can do is stop pretending it can be saved." Lydia's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "Silas, what are you—" "I need to check something in the kitchen," I said, standing up. "Please don't let me interrupt the celebration." I walked away from the table, leaving behind the uncomfortable silence and the smell of expensive perfume and wine. In the kitchen, I leaned against the marble counter, another restoration project I'd completed last year, and tried to steady my breathing. 8 years. 8 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? With a toast celebrating my expendability? I was about to head back out to play the part of the understanding husband for the rest of the evening when I noticed Lydia's iPad sitting on the kitchen island. She must have been using it earlier to show off photos from her latest sponsored trip to Napa Valley. The screen was still lit up, showing her messages. I wasn't the type to snoop through my wife's private conversations, but something caught my eye. A group chat called The Exit Strategy. My stomach dropped. I picked up the iPad with trembling hands. The messages were from earlier today, just hours before our dinner party. "Bianca, are you really going through with it tonight?" "Lydia, it's time. I can't pretend anymore. Roman and I have been planning this for months." "Marnie, what about Silas? He's going to be devastated." "Lydia, he'll survive. He's got his dusty antiques to keep him company. Besides, Roman's already lined up that amazing loft downtown. We can finally be together properly, Bianca. I still can't believe you've been sneaking around for 6 months. You're braver than me. Lydia. It's not brave. It's necessary. Silas is a good man, but he's not my man. He's like a comfortable old sweater. Safe, familiar, boring as hell. Roman. Can't wait to celebrate properly later? My place after dinner? Lydia. Obviously, I'll make some excuse about helping clean up. I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages, plans for secret meetups, complaints about my obsession with work, jokes about my appearance, my hobbies, my apparent inadequacy in bed, screenshots of apartment listings, discussion of divorce lawyers. They'd been planning this for months. The dinner party wasn't just a social gathering, it was Lydia's coming out party, her public declaration that she was ready to move on from her placeholder husband. I heard laughter from the dining room, and suddenly it all made sense. The seating arrangement that put Roman at the opposite end of the table from me. The way Lydia had been checking her phone all evening, smiling at messages I couldn't see. The toast that wasn't really about friendship, it was about freedom. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more messages. There were photos too. Lydia and Roman at restaurants I couldn't afford. Lydia wearing lingerie I'd never seen. Roman's hands on my wife's body in ways that made my vision blur with rage. Silas? Lydia's voice called from the dining room. Everything okay in there? I quickly turned off the iPad and set it back where I'd found it. When I looked up, she was standing in the kitchen doorway, concern creasing her perfect features. Fine, I said. Just needed a moment. She walked over and placed a hand on my arm, the same hand that had been all over Pemberton-Cale for the past 6 months. I know tonight has been a lot, she said softly. My friends can be overwhelming, but they are important to me, Silas. I need you to understand that. I looked down at her, this woman I'd loved for 8 years, this woman I'd built a life with, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. I understand perfectly, I said. She smiled, relieved. Good. Now come back to dinner. Marnie brought that chocolate cake from the place downtown. Actually, I said, I think I'm going to call it a night. I have an early morning tomorrow. Her face fell slightly. But it's only 9 o'clock, and Roman was hoping to see your workshop. You know how interested he is in antiques. I bet he was, probably calculating how much everything was worth for the divorce proceedings. Another time, I said. Tell everyone I said good night. I started to walk past her, but she caught my arm again. Silas, are you sure you're okay? You seem different. I looked at her for a long moment. She was beautiful, successful, charming. Everything a man was supposed to want. And she was right. Husbands probably did come and go in her world. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. She'd assumed I'd go quietly. I'm perfect, I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. Have fun with your friends. I left her standing in the kitchen and headed upstairs to our bedroom. Behind me, I could hear her rejoining the party, her laughter a little too bright, a little too forced. I sat on the edge of our bed, the antique four-poster I'd found at an auction and spent weeks refinishing, and pulled out my phone. I had some research to do. The first thing I looked up was the legal structure of Lydia's blogging business. She'd been so excited when I'd helped her set up the LLC 3 years ago, insisting that my name be on all the paperwork for tax purposes. She'd kissed me and called me her business partner, said we were building something together. Funny how she'd forgotten that part. According to the documents I pulled up, I wasn't just a co-owner of Lydia's Lux Life LLC. I was the primary member, which meant I had control over all the business contracts, including the lucrative sponsorship deals with luxury brands that funded her lifestyle. I scrolled through her Instagram, looking at the posts from the past few months with new eyes. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry, weekend trips to exclusive resorts, all of it tagged with a Beanshire sponsored or gifted, but none of it properly disclosed according to FTC guidelines. Lydia had always been careless about the legal requirements for influencer marketing. I'd warned her about it before, but she'd waved off my concerns with a laugh. Nobody cares about that stuff, Silas. It's just bureaucratic nonsense. But I cared about that stuff. I cared about contracts and legal requirements and proper documentation. It was part of what made me good at my job, attention to detail, respect for rules and procedures. It was also part of what was about to make me very dangerous. I spent the next 2 hours on my laptop, documenting everything, screenshots of undisclosed sponsorships, records of gifts that hadn't been reported as income, contracts that had been violated. By the time I heard the front door close and cars pulling out of our driveway, I had enough evidence to destroy Lydia's entire influencer career. But that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the tools of my trade, magnifying glasses, restoration chemicals, delicate brushes, and planned the systematic destruction of my wife's life. It sounds harsh when I put it like that, but restoration work had taught me something important. Sometimes you have to strip away everything false and damaged before you can see what's really worth saving. And after 8 years of marriage, I was finally ready to see Lydia clearly. She came home at 3 a.m. I heard her trying to be quiet, slipping off her heels in the entryway, tiptoeing up the stairs. She paused outside our bedroom door, probably debating whether to come in or sleep in the guest room. She chose the guest room. Smart choice. The next morning, I was already dressed and having coffee when she appeared in the kitchen, still wearing last night's dress but looking significantly less put together. Her makeup was smudged, her hair disheveled. She looked like a woman who'd spent the night making poor decisions. "Morning," she said, avoiding my eyes as she poured herself coffee. "Sorry I was so late. We ended up going to that new cocktail bar downtown. You know how Marnie gets when she's had a few drinks." I said, not looking up from my phone. I was reading an article about FTC regulations for social media influencers. Fascinating stuff, really. "Are you still upset about last night?" she asked, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "Because I've been thinking about what you said, and maybe I was a little insensitive with that toast." A little insensitive, like accidentally stepping on someone's toe, not publicly humiliating your husband in front of his replacement. "Don't worry about it," I said. "I understand exactly where I stand." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "Silas, you know you're important to me, right? I mean, we've built something real together. This house, your business, my blog." "Our business," I wanted to correct her, but I just nodded and smiled. "Of course," I said. "We're partners." The relief on her face was almost comical. She probably thought she'd dodged a bullet, that her boring husband was going to go back to being boring and predictable and easy to manage. "I have to run some errands today," I said, standing up. "Business stuff. I'll probably be out most of the afternoon." "Okay," she said, already pulling out her phone to check her messages, probably texting Roman about how she'd successfully managed the situation. "I've got a sponsored post to shoot anyway. That jewelry company is sending over a whole collection." "Sounds lucrative," I said. "It is. This one deal is worth more than you make in 3 months." The casual cruelty of that comment might have stung yesterday. Today, it just made me smile. "Well," I said, "enjoy it while it lasts." My first stop was downtown, to the offices of Meridian Marketing, the agency that handled several of Lydia's biggest sponsorship deals. I'd met their compliance officer, Janet Morrison, at a business networking event last year. She'd seemed like a no-nonsense type who took regulations seriously. "Mr. Morton," Janet said, welcoming me into her office. "What a pleasant surprise. How's Lydia's blog doing?" "That's actually what I wanted to discuss," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I've been doing some reviewing of our business practices, and I'm concerned we might have some compliance issues." Janet's expression immediately became more serious. "What kind of issues?" I pulled out a folder I'd prepared that morning. "Undisclosed sponsorships, unreported gifts, possible tax violations. As the primary member of the LLC, I feel obligated to bring these to your attention." For the next hour, I walked Janet through the evidence I'd compiled. Her face grew more grave with each example I showed her. "This is extensive," she said finally. "And you're saying Lydia was handling all the posting and disclosure requirements herself?" "I trusted her to follow the guidelines," I said, with just the right amount of concerned husband energy. "I focus on the business side, she handles the creative content, but when I started reviewing things more carefully..." "Mr. Morton, I have to tell you, this could result in significant penalties from the FTC, and our clients take compliance very seriously. We could be looking at immediate contract terminations." "I understand," I said gravely. "I just felt I had to do the right thing." By the time I left Janet's office, I knew that Lydia's phone would be ringing within hours. The major brands she worked with, the jewelry company, the luxury handbag manufacturer, the high-end skincare line, would all be pulling their contracts immediately. But I wasn't done. My next stop was First National Bank, where we kept our business accounts. I'd made an appointment with our business banker, Robert Chen, no relation to Bianca, thankfully. "I need to make some changes to our LLC structure," I told him. "Specifically, I want to dissolve the entity and transfer all assets to my personal accounts." Robert looked confused. "Is there a problem with the business?" "Let's just say there are some compliance issues that make it prudent to shut things down cleanly," I said. "I want to make sure I'm protected from any potential liability." Since I was the primary member of the LLC, I had the legal right to dissolve it unilaterally. Within 2 hours, all of Lydia's business accounts were frozen and the process of asset transfer had begun. The beauty of it was that it was completely legal. I wasn't stealing anything or breaking any laws. I was simply exercising my rights as the majority owner of a business that my wife had apparently forgotten I controlled. My final stop of the day was to my storage facility across town. This was where I kept the overflow from my restoration business, pieces I'd acquired but hadn't had time to work on yet, completed projects waiting for pickup, and our personal collection of antiques and artwork. Over the years, Lydia and I had accumulated quite a bit. She had a good eye for valuable pieces, and I had the expertise to restore them to their full potential. Our collection was worth easily 6 figures, maybe more. I spent the afternoon carefully cataloging everything and arranging for it all to be moved to a climate-controlled storage facility in the next county. Legally, since most of the pieces had been purchased with income from my business or restored using my labor, I had a strong claim to ownership. By the time I got home that evening, I felt like a general who just successfully executed the opening moves of a complex military campaign. Lydia was in the living room, pacing back and forth with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was high and strained. "I don't understand," she was saying. "The post clearly says sponsored. How is that not enough disclosure?" I hung up my jacket and walked into the kitchen, where I could still hear her conversation. "What do you mean the contract is terminated immediately? We had a deal through the end of the year." I opened a beer and leaned against the counter, listening to my wife's world begin to crumble. "Janet, please, you have to give me a chance to fix this. I can redo all the posts, add whatever disclosures you need." There was a long pause, then I heard Lydia's voice break slightly. "I see. Yes, I understand. Thank you for... No, I know you're just doing your job." She appeared in the kitchen doorway a moment later, her face pale and her hands shaking. "Silas," she said, "something terrible has happened. Meridian Marketing is dropping me. They're saying there are compliance issues with my posts, that I haven't been following FTC guidelines properly." "That's awful," I said, taking a sip of my beer. "What kind of compliance issues?" "I don't know. Something about undisclosed sponsorships and unreported gifts. They're making it sound like I was trying to commit fraud or something." "Were you following the guidelines?" I asked mildly. "Of course I was. I think I was. You know I'm not good with all that legal stuff. That's your department." "My department. Interesting how it was suddenly my department when things went wrong." "Well," I said, "I'm sure you can work it out. Maybe get a lawyer to review your practices." "A lawyer?" Her voice pitched higher. "Silas, do you have any idea how much lawyers cost? And it's not just Meridian. I've gotten calls from 3 other companies today. Everyone's freaking out about compliance all of a sudden." "Weird coincidence," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. But Lydia had never been particularly good at connecting dots, especially when she was panicking. "I need to call Roman," she said finally. "He knows people in marketing. Maybe he can help me figure this out." "Good idea," I said. "I'm sure Roman will take care of you." She gave me a sharp look at that, but her phone was already ringing in her hand. "Roman," she said, walking back toward the living room. "Thank God, I need your help. Something's happening with my sponsors, and I don't know what to do." I finished my beer and headed upstairs. I had emails to send and more research to do. Tomorrow was going to be an even busier day. As I sat down at my computer, I could hear Lydia downstairs, her voice growing more frantic as she tried to explain the situation to her lover. I wondered if Roman would still be interested in their downtown loft when Lydia's income dropped to 0. Somehow, I doubted it. The next morning, Lydia didn't come down for breakfast. I could hear her upstairs, making phone call after phone call, her voice getting more desperate with each conversation. Apparently, word traveled fast in the influencer world. I was reading the newspaper and eating toast when my phone buzzed with a text from Jasper Williams, my assistant at the restoration shop. Jasper was a former small-time criminal who'd gotten his life together after a stint in county jail, and he had a useful understanding of how information moved through certain circles. "Jasper. Boss, you need to see this. Bianca Chen's been calling around asking questions about you. Word is she thinks you're behind Lydia's sponsor problems." "Interesting. Bianca was smarter than I'd given her credit for." "Me? What kind of questions?" "Jasper. Legal stuff. Business stuff. She's trying to figure out if you have any control over Lydia's contracts. Want me to handle it?" "Me. No. Let her ask. She won't find anything actionable." "Jasper. If you say so. But boss, whatever you're doing, be careful. These people aren't going to go down quiet." Jasper was right, of course. I'd expected pushback. What I hadn't expected was how quickly it would come. Around noon, Bianca and Marnie showed up at my house. I watched from my office window as they marched up the front walkway, both of them looking like they were heading into battle. Bianca had traded her usual designer casual for a sharp business suit, while Marnie looked like she'd been crying. The doorbell rang, and I heard Lydia rush downstairs to answer it. "Thank God you're here," Lydia said, her voice carrying clearly through the house. "I don't know what to do. It's like everyone's turned against me overnight." "We need to talk," Bianca said. "All of us, including Silas." "Silas!" Lydia called. "Can you come down here? My friends want to discuss something." I took my time walking downstairs, making sure to look slightly confused and concerned. When I entered the living room, all three women were sitting on the couch, facing the chair where I was clearly expected to sit. "Ladies," I said, settling into my chair, "what can I do for you?" Bianca leaned forward, her eyes hard. "You can start by explaining what you did to sabotage Lydia's business." "I'm sorry," I said, tilting my head. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play dumb, Silas. It's too much of a coincidence that every single one of Lydia's sponsors dropped her in the same day, all citing the same compliance issues." "That does sound suspicious," I agreed. "Have you considered that maybe there actually were compliance issues?" Lydia's face flushed. "There weren't any issues. I've been doing this for 3 years. I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" I asked gently. "Because from what I understand, the FTC has very specific requirements about disclosure. And I've noticed that a lot of your recent posts didn't include proper hashtags or disclaimers." "That's not true." "Show me," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let's look at your post from last Tuesday, the one with the diamond bracelet." Lydia reluctantly pulled up the post. I leaned over to look at it, noting how she flinched slightly when I got close. "I see the brand tag," I said, "and I see Chara sponsored in the caption. But where's the har ad hashtag? And did you report the value of that bracelet as income?" I don't remember exactly. Because according to FTC guidelines, any gift worth more than $600 has to be reported, and that bracelet retails for about $3,000. Bianca's eyes narrowed. "How do you know so much about FTC guidelines all of a sudden?" "I've always known about them," I said calmly. I tried to explain them to Lydia when she started the blog, but she said it was too complicated and boring. I figured she'd learn as she went along. "This is bullshit," Marnie said suddenly. "You're trying to destroy her because you're jealous of her success?" I looked at Marnie with genuine curiosity. Jealous of what, exactly? Her career. Her friends. The fact that she's built something amazing while you're stuck in your dusty workshop playing with old furniture. "Marnie," Lydia said quietly, but I held up a hand. "No, it's okay," I said. "I'm interested in Marnie's perspective. Tell me, what exactly has Lydia built?" "She has hundreds of thousands of followers. She makes more money than you do. She's invited to exclusive events and gets free designer clothes and jewelry." "Had," I corrected gently. "She had those things. And you're right. She did make more money than me. Past tense." The room went very quiet. "What do you mean, past tense?" Bianca asked. "Well," I said, "without the sponsorship income, and with the LLC dissolved, Lydia's current income is essentially zero." "What do you mean the LLC is dissolved?" Lydia's voice was barely a whisper. "I dissolved it yesterday," I said matter-of-factly. Given the compliance issues and potential legal liability, it seemed like the prudent thing to do. "You can't do that without my permission." "Actually, I can. I'm the primary member, remember? You insisted on that structure for tax purposes." Lydia's face had gone completely white. But all my contracts were through the LLC. My bank accounts are frozen pending the dissolution process, yes. The funds will be distributed according to the ownership percentages once all liabilities are settled." "What liabilities?" Bianca demanded. "Well, there could be FTC fines, tax penalties for unreported income, breach of contract damages from sponsors. It's hard to say exactly how much until everything's been audited." I was lying, of course. I'd structured the dissolution to minimize any real liability, but they didn't need to know that. "This is insane," Marnie said. "You can't just destroy someone's business because you're having marital problems." "I'm not destroying anything," I said calmly. "I'm protecting my legal interests. If Lydia wants to start a new business with proper compliance procedures, she's free to do that." "With what money?" Lydia asked, her voice breaking. "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're resourceful." Bianca stood up abruptly. "This isn't over, Silas. What you're doing is vindictive and cruel, and we're going to find a way to stop you." "I'm not sure what you think I'm doing wrong," I said, standing as well. "I'm following the law and protecting my business interests. If you think I've done something illegal, you're welcome to contact a lawyer." "Maybe we will," Bianca said. "Good luck with that," I replied. "I'm sure you can find someone willing to take the case on contingency, given how much money Lydia has to pay legal fees." Bianca's face flushed red, but she couldn't argue with the logic. Lydia was effectively broke, at least until the LLC assets were distributed, and that could take months. After they left, Lydia sat on the couch staring at her phone, scrolling through her social media accounts like she was watching her life disappear in real time. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked without looking up. "Planning what?" "Don't." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Just don't. We both know what you're doing." I sat back down in my chair and studied my wife. Without her usual makeup and styling, she looked younger, more vulnerable. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. "I found your iPad the night of the dinner party," I said. "Read the whole group chat." She closed her eyes. "Silas, 6 months, Lydia. You've been planning to leave me for 6 months, and I never had a clue. Do you have any idea how that feels?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said quietly. "I didn't plan to fall in love with Roman. It just happened. But you did plan to humiliate me in front of him. That toast wasn't spontaneous." She opened her eyes and looked at me directly for the first time in days. "You're right, and I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that." "No, I didn't. But what you're doing now, it's not going to bring me back, Silas. If anything, it's just proving that we're not right for each other." "I don't want you back," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought was yours. So this is revenge. This is justice." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What happens now?" "Now you figure out what your life looks like without me propping it up," I said, "and I figure out what mine looks like without you tearing it down. The house is in my name, bought with money from my business before we were married. The cars. The BMW is yours. It's paid off. The Range Rover was a business expense, so that goes back to the company. Which you dissolved. Which I dissolved." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really thought this through, didn't you? I had a lot of time to think while you were at Roman's place." That hit home. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "What about the antiques? The art collection? What about them? We bought those together. With money from my business, using my expertise, after restoration work that I did myself." I shrugged. "I think my ownership claim is pretty solid." "You're going to leave me with nothing." "I'm going to leave you with exactly what you brought to this marriage," I said. "Your BMW, your clothes, your personal belongings, and your talent for self-promotion. If that's nothing, well, that's not really my problem anymore." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "I don't know who you are anymore." "I'm the same person I've always been," I said. "You just never bothered to pay attention." That evening, after Lydia had locked herself in the guest bedroom, I called Jasper. "How's it going, boss?" "Better than expected," I said. "But I need you to do something for me tomorrow." "Name it." "I want you to go to Romano's Cafe downtown, around lunchtime. Sit at the counter where you can see the whole restaurant." "Looking for anyone in particular?" "Pemberton-Cale and Bianca Chen. I have a feeling they're going to have an interesting conversation." "You want me to listen in?" "I want you to observe. Body language, tone, how long they talk. And if you happen to overhear anything interesting, well, that's just a coincidence." Jasper chuckled. "You're getting scary, boss. I like it. Just remember, observe only. Don't engage, don't make yourself known. Can you handle that?" "Boss, I spent 2 years in county lockup. I know how to be invisible." After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle Lydia and I had been saving for our anniversary next month. It was a 2015 Bordeaux that had cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. It tasted like victory. Jasper's report the next day was even more interesting than I'd hoped. "They met at Romano's, just like you predicted," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk at the shop. "But boss, it wasn't what you'd expect." "How so?" "Well, first off, Bianca was pissed. I mean, seriously angry. She was doing that thing where women try to keep their voices down, but you can tell they want to scream." "And Roman?" "That's the interesting part. He was trying to calm her down, but he looked nervous. Real nervous. Like a guy who's just realized he's in over his head." I leaned back in my chair. "What were they talking about?" "Money, mostly. Bianca kept saying something about how this was going to ruin everything, and Roman kept saying they'd figure it out. But then she said something that made him go really quiet." "Which was?" She asked him what his wife was going to say when she found out about the apartment he'd rented for Lydia. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. Roman's married? Apparently. And according to Bianca, his wife controls the family money. Something about a trust fund. This was better than I dared to hope. Roman wasn't just Lydia's lover. He was a cheating husband whose lifestyle depended on his wife's family fortune. Did you get a name? Victoria-Cale. And boss, I did a little digging after lunch. Victoria-Cale is Victoria Pemberton-Cale, as in the Pemberton shipping fortune. Her family's worth about $50 million. And Roman? Roman's a wannabe producer who's never actually produced anything, lives off his wife's money, and pretends to be a big shot in the entertainment industry. I spent the rest of the afternoon researching Victoria Pemberton-Cale. She was 42, a serious woman who sat on the boards of several charities and cultural organizations. She'd been married to Roman for 15 years, and from what I could tell from social media and society pages, she believed she had a devoted husband who shared her commitment to philanthropy and the arts. The irony was delicious. Roman was cheating on his wealthy wife with my wife, using his wife's money to fund the affair. And now that Lydia was broke, he was probably realizing that his sugar baby had suddenly become a liability. That evening, I made a decision that would have shocked the old me. I was going to pay Victoria-Cale a visit. I found her at the Pemberton Foundation offices downtown, staying late to review grant applications. The security guard let me up after I explained that I had information about her husband that she needed to hear. Victoria-Cale was elegant in the way that only came from generations of good breeding and expensive education. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her silver hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon. "Mr. Morton," she said, gesturing for me to sit across from her desk. "I have to admit, I'm curious about why you're here." "Mrs. Cale, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear, but I believe you have a right to know." Her expression didn't change, but I saw her hands tighten slightly on the arms of her chair. "Your husband has been having an affair with my wife for the past 6 months," I said simply. "I have evidence if you'd like to see it." For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she reached for her purse and pulled out a small silver flask. "Scotch?" she offered. "Thank you." She poured 2 small glasses and handed me one. We drank in silence. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "I found out 3 days ago." "And you decided to come to me because I believe in honesty, and because I think we might be able to help each other." She smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "You want revenge?" "I want justice. There's a difference." "Is there?" She took another sip of scotch. "Tell me, Mr. Morton, what exactly do you think I can do about this situation?" "Roman has been using your money to fund his affair, the apartment he rented for my wife, the expensive dinners, the weekend trips, all of it paid for with your family's fortune." "I see. And you have proof of this?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots from Lydia's group chat, including the photos of her and Roman at expensive restaurants and hotels. Victoria studied the images with the same calm attention she probably gave to foundation grant applications. "The Ritz-Carlton in Napa," she said, pointing to one photo. "Roman told me he was there for a business meeting. According to the timestamps, he was there with my wife." She nodded and handed my phone back. "Mr. Morton, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, but I'm curious. What exactly do you hope to accomplish here?" "I want Roman to understand that actions have consequences," I said, "and I want my wife to realize that her new life isn't going to be as comfortable as she thought." Victoria was quiet for a long time, studying me with intelligent gray eyes. "You know," she said finally, "I've suspected for months that Roman was having an affair. He's not nearly as clever as he thinks he is. But I didn't know who, and I didn't have proof. And now you do. Now I do." She finished her scotch and set the glass down with deliberate precision. "Mr. Morton, I'm going to make you an offer. I'll handle Roman, and I assure you, when I'm done with him, he won't be in any position to support your wife's lifestyle. In exchange, I want you to promise me something." "What?" "When this is all over, when you've gotten your revenge and I've gotten mine, we never speak of this conversation. As far as the world is concerned, I discovered my husband's infidelity through my own investigation." "Agreed." She stood up and extended her hand. "Then we have a deal, Mr. Morton. I hope you're prepared for what's about to happen." "I've been preparing for 3 days." "Then you're about to get a masterclass in how old money handles betrayal." I left Victoria's office feeling like I'd just allied myself with a very elegant, very dangerous woman. Roman Cale had no idea what was about to hit him. When I got home, Lydia was in the kitchen making herself a sandwich. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see she'd been crying. "Where were you?" she asked. "Business meeting." "At 9 o'clock at night?" "Some meetings can't wait." She studied my face, and I could see her trying to read my expression. "Silas, can we talk? Really talk." "About what?" "About us. About what happens next." I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "What did you have in mind?" "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But destroying my career isn't going to fix our marriage." "Our marriage is over, Lydia. You ended it 6 months ago when you started sleeping with Roman." "It doesn't have to be over. People work through infidelity all the time. We could go to counseling, try to rebuild." "Rebuild what? Trust? Respect? Love?" I shook my head. "You can't restore something that was never really there." "That's not true. We were happy once." "You were comfortable once. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "What about Roman?" "What about him?" "Are you going to try to destroy him too?" I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt something that might have been pity. "Lydia," I said gently, "I don't need to destroy Roman. He's about to destroy himself." "What does that mean?" "It means you might want to have a backup plan for that downtown loft." The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Jasper. "Boss, you need to turn on Channel 7 News. Right now." I grabbed the remote and flipped to the local morning show. The anchor was standing outside a downtown high-rise, speaking into her microphone with barely contained excitement. "What sources are calling one of the most dramatic confrontations in recent society page history. Victoria Pemberton-Cale, heir to the Pemberton shipping fortune, allegedly confronted her husband, Roman Cale, and his mistress at their downtown love nest early this morning." The camera panned to show Roman Cale being escorted out of the building by security, his clothes disheveled, his face red with embarrassment. Behind him, a woman I didn't recognize, clearly not Lydia, was crying and trying to hide her face from the cameras. "Wait," I said to Jasper, who was still on the phone. "That's not Lydia." "Keep watching, boss." The reporter continued. "Sources close to the Pemberton-Cale family say that Roman Cale has been maintaining relationships with multiple women, all funded by his wife's family fortune. Mrs. Pemberton-Cale's attorney has announced that divorce proceedings will begin immediately and that a complete audit of all family assets is already underway." I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly muted the TV. Lydia appeared in the living room, her hair messy, her eyes wide with panic. "Silas," she said, "something's happened. Roman's not answering his phone, and there are news vans outside his building." "Really?" I said, unmuting the TV. "That's terrible." She looked at the screen just in time to see Roman being interviewed by a reporter, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. "I have no comment," Roman was saying. "This is a private family matter." "Mr. Cale," the reporter pressed, "can you confirm that you've been using your wife's money to maintain relationships with multiple women?" "No comment." Lydia sank onto the couch, her face pale. "Multiple women?" "Apparently so," I said, settling into my chair with my coffee. "Looks like you weren't as special as you thought." "This isn't possible. Roman loves me. He was going to leave his wife for me." "Was he?" Because it sounds like he was telling the same story to several different women. The news report continued with a statement from Victoria's attorney about the divorce proceedings and the immediate freezing of all accounts that Roman had access to. "Mr. Cale will be required to return all property purchased with Pemberton family funds, including vehicles, jewelry, and real estate. The downtown apartment in question has been sealed pending investigation." Lydia's phone started ringing. She looked at the screen and her face crumpled. "It's Bianca," she said. "You should answer it. I'm sure she has lots of helpful advice." Lydia answered the phone with shaking hands. "Bianca, did you see? What do you mean, you tried to warn me? Warn me about what?" I watched my wife's face as her best friend apparently delivered some very unwelcome news. "He what? When? Why didn't you tell me?" There was a long pause, then Lydia said quietly, "I see. No, I understand. You were trying to protect me." She hung up and sat staring at the phone. "What did Bianca say?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. "She said she's known for weeks that Roman was seeing other women. She tried to hint at it, but she didn't want to hurt me." That was thoughtful of her. She also said, Lydia's voice broke slightly. She said Roman called her last night, asking if she could lend him money. His wife cut off all his credit cards and bank accounts. Tough break. Lydia looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You knew this was going to happen." "I suspected Roman might not be as reliable as you thought." "How?" Because men who cheat with married women usually cheat on them too. It's not exactly rocket science. She was quiet for a long time, watching the news coverage of her lover's public humiliation. "What happens to me now?" she asked finally. "Now you figure out who you are when you're not someone else's accessory," I said. "It might be good for you." "I don't know how to be alone." "Then you'd better learn fast."